Hello and welcome to The Search. I'm Shahei Jurgen. In this study, we're going to examine Psalms 91 and 92, and the title of our study is God is Israel's Fortress Once Again. So, let's study these Psalms together. As Book 3 of the Psalter testifies, the exile caused the people of Israel to question their relationship with God. It's fitting, then, that Book 4 opens with an intercessory prayer from a legendary figure of Israel's past. The one and only psalm from Moses is Psalm 90. In this prayer, Moses begs God not to forget his people even though their existence is brief and transient compared to the everlasting Yahweh. Moses asks that God will show compassion and unfailing love, relenting of his anger, so that he might bring joy and gladness to his people once more. Now, while Israel's condition is still in jeopardy, Psalms 91 and 92 don't really function at the same level of despair that we saw in those exilic-themed psalms back in Book 3. Rather, these psalms testify to a sense of renewed relationship between God and his people, which allows them to make some familiar statements that sound a whole lot like how David spoke about God in his earlier psalms. In Psalm 91, Yahweh is identified as the people's refuge and fortress. God will not allow any harm to overtake those who find refuge in him. Because of God's love, the people will enjoy rescue and protection. And then, in Psalm 92, Yahweh's love and faithfulness are celebrated with song. God's enemies are defeated, while the righteous are made to flourish. Both psalms open with the inclusion of an ancient description of God. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty, Psalm 91:1, and it is good to praise Yahweh and make music to your name, O Most High, Psalm 92 and verse 1. The Most High was a poetic way to refer to God when biblical authors wanted to emphasize his supremacy. This could be in the context of his authority over creation, the nations, or the lesser gods. The title's use in the opening lines of Psalm 91 and 92 likely indicate a renewed confidence in God's ability to deliver his people by overpowering the Babylonians and their lesser gods. The bulk of Psalm 91 is a description of trust in God's ability and willingness to protect the psalmist and others who seek his refuge. Additionally, the final three verses offer a kind of revelation from God himself, who speaks a confirming word which corroborates the psalmist's own message. Psalm 91 has no superscription, which likely implies that it's in some way connected to Psalm 90, which again was that intercessory prayer from Moses. Let's get into the text now. Psalm 91, beginning in verses 1 and 2. Whoever dwells in the shadow of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of Yahweh, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Now, verse 1 highlights the theme of the psalm as a kind of motto. God provides shelter for all who dwell in him. And then verse 2 adds the author's personal conviction of trust in the safe refuge of God, my fortress. In these 4 lines, there are 4 distinct references to the subject of the psalm: the Most High, the Almighty, Yahweh, and my God. The next section offers a kind of admonition from the author to his audience, picking up in verse 3. Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare. That was a kind of net used to catch birds. And from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plagues that destroy at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. Wilcock counts 7 perils that are identified in these verses. There are unseen traps, deadly diseases, terrors which stalk in the night, arrows which are fired in the day, pestilences which spread in the cover of darkness, plagues which strike when the sun is at its highest point, and destruction so severe that thousands may suddenly die. None of these will impact the one who finds God's safe refuge. Continuing on, verse 9, if you say, Yahweh is my refuge, and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you, no disaster will come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. Now, always remember that reading the Psalms requires some significant discernment. Psalm 91 here is giving testimony of the ideal, that those who trust in God will not be harmed. In Psalm 73, Asaph, however, is struggling with the exact opposite. He is looking out at the rich and the wicked, those who oppress the righteous, and he says this, the arrogant wicked have no struggles. Their bodies are healthy and strong. They are free from common human burdens. They are not plagued by human ills. Psalm 73 verses 4 and 5. He then contrasts his own lot in life as one who has tried to be pure before God in verse 14, writing, all day long I have been afflicted, and every morning brings new punishments. So we see this tension. Sometimes the righteous suffer and the wicked prosper. But the reality of life outside of Eden does not negate the truth of what Psalm 91 is trying to tell us. God indeed remains a refuge and dwelling for all who trust in him, even if that safety and protection are experienced in the age to come, rather than the here and now. Psalm 91 was famously quoted by the devil during Jesus' wilderness temptation. The devil invited Jesus to throw himself down from the temple's highest point. After all, the devil reasoned, Psalm 91 says that God will send his angels to guard and rescue those who trust in him. Jesus replied with a scripture quotation of his own, do not put the Lord your God to the test. We see that in Luke 4 verse 12, quoting Deuteronomy 6:16. Trusting in God's protection does not mean deliberately antagonizing him or forcing his hand, as the Israelites did during their wilderness sojourn. Finally, after assuring his audience that God will protect them if they turn to him in complete surrender and trust, the Lord appears at the end of the psalm to deliver his own assurance. Because he loves me, says Yahweh in verse 14, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call on me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. Some commentators identify Israel's king as the primary target audience of these words here in Psalm 91. The idea is because the king loves God, Yahweh will rescue, protect, honor, and satisfy him. But I wonder if this is too limiting. I mean, these words from the Lord sound like a kind of a general call, an invitation to come to God in love, trust, and confession. And so Tate offers this summary. Thus, Psalm 91 is an enduring encouragement to faith, which asks us to respond to its affirmations. The case for faith is not put in the language of argument, it declares the reality. We are challenged to ground our endeavors in trust in Yahweh, a trust which will not fail and which leads us along a way where we will see more and more of the saving work of God until finally our knowledge will be complete. Now that the relationship between God and Israel has been reestablished after the long and dire days of the exile, the question is, how shall the people resume their praise for God? And this is really the focus of our next psalm, Psalm 92. Tanner writes, Psalm 92 is a prayer of thanksgiving that focuses on God's vanquishing of enemies and on God's provision of a safe place for God's people to worship. It continues the theme of recovery after great national losses. Now, a unique and highly significant note concerning Psalm 92 is its superscript. It reads, a psalm, a song for the Sabbath day. This is interesting. This is the only psalm specifically assigned for use on the Sabbath. Now, future psalms will also include special references for when they're to be utilized. One example is the collection known as the Songs of Ascents. That's Psalms 120 through 134. And these were likely songs that were sung by the Israelites as they ascended or went up to Jerusalem for festivals and worship. And this means, of course, something we've seen before, that certain psalms had a liturgical function. Now, the English word liturgy comes from a Greek composite word. It combines laos, which refers to the people or public, and ergo, which means work. And so liturgy, in a sense, is the kind of the work of the people or a public service, a public act. In a religious context, liturgy usually refers to those activities that are associated with public worship. While some people may only connect the word liturgy to like Catholicism or similar religious traditions, the reality is that every church has some kind of liturgy. Most churches follow a common order or arrangement of service, which includes musical praise, prayer, teaching, communion, a monetary contribution. And of course, it's not surprising that the earliest Christians developed a liturgy because they were all raised with the Jewish liturgy, associated both with the temple and the synagogue. Even those Gentile believers who came out of paganism would have understood liturgies as the idea that when you go to a public space for worship, there is some procedure that facilitates that worship. This is common in the Bible, common in the ancient world, common in the rich history of Christian tradition. Psalm 92 gives us one of those kinds of liturgical elements. It's a song that Jewish people could sing on the Sabbath. All right, well, let's see what this Sabbath song is all about. Psalm 92, a psalm, a song for the Sabbath day, beginning in verse 1. It is good to praise Yahweh and make music to your name, O Most High, proclaiming your love in the morning and your faithfulness at night, to the music of the 10-string lyre and the melody of the harp. For you make me glad by your deeds, Yahweh. I sing for joy at what your hands have done. How great are your works, Yahweh! How profound your thoughts! Senseless people do not know, fools do not understand, that though the wicked spring up like grass and all evildoers flourish, they will be destroyed forever. But you, Yahweh, are forever exalted. We see right here at the beginning, it's God's love and faithfulness, these twin pillars, these virtues of God that are celebrated over and over throughout the book of Psalms. They are the cause for this Sabbath song, this musical praise. The work God has done makes the psalmist glad, and even though evildoers flourish for a season, their lives, of course, are short-lived. We saw that in Moses' prayer in Psalm 90. Yahweh, on the other hand, is exalted forever. While the contrast here is between the everlasting God and the short-lived evildoers, there's another contrast that's going to dominate the rest of this Sabbath psalm, beginning in verse 9. For surely your enemies, Yahweh, surely your enemies will perish, all evildoers will be scattered. You have exalted my horn like that of a wild ox. Fine oils have been poured on me. My eyes have seen the defeat of my adversaries. My ears have heard the rout of my wicked foes. The righteous will flourish like a palm tree. They will grow like a cedar of Lebanon. Planted in the house of Yahweh, they will flourish in the courts of our God. They will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green, proclaiming, Yahweh is upright. He is my rock, and there is no wickedness in him. The contrast in this section is between the enemies of God and the righteous. God's enemies spring up in their own strength, but God destroys them. The psalmist's strength is not his own. Rather, it comes from the Lord. Unlike a blade of grass, which is here one day and gone the next, The righteous become mighty, long-lasting, fruit-producing trees because they're planted in God's house. This should remind us of the very first psalm, where those who delight in and meditate on Yahweh's instructions are like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. Psalm 1 and verse 3. Now, Psalm 92 begins with musical praise, and it ends with a proclamation. Yahweh is upright. He is my rock, and there is no wickedness in him. I think it's vital for us to remember the context of these two Psalms, 91 and 92, because it wasn't long ago in the Psalm book here that Heman the Ezrahite wrote this concerning God. From my youth I have suffered and been close to death. I have borne your terrors, he's talking to God, and am in despair. Your wrath has swept over me. Your terrors have destroyed me. All day long they surrounded me like a flood. They have completely engulfed me. You, God, have taken from me friend and neighbor. Darkness is my closest friend. Psalm 88, verses 15 through 18. And then his colleague and relative, Ethan, wrote this. How long, Yahweh? Will you hide yourself forever? How long will your wrath burn like fire? Remember how fleeting is my life, for what futility you have created all humanity. Who can live and not see death, or who can escape the power of the grave? Lord, where is your former great love, which in your faithfulness you swore to David? See love and faithfulness there, but not in a very happy context at the end of Psalm 89. Now, Psalms 88 and 89 are shocking. They're scandalizing. They're startling in their tone of despair and defeat and anguish. So how did we go from that to this trusting praise in Psalms 91 and 92? Well, of course, two events have occurred. One, we studied in our last lesson. We studied the incredible and beautiful intercession of Moses, who prayed, relent, Yahweh. How long will it be? Have compassion on your servants. Psalm 90 and verse 13. Then the second event is one that's really only implied. It's that the exile has ended. So how profoundly we see that humans can be impacted by their circumstances. I mean, the fact that Psalm 92 is a Sabbath psalm implies to us something of utmost importance. For the children of Israel, the Sabbath was kind of a weekly reset. 6 days of labor followed by 1 day of rest. 6 days of hardship followed by 1 day of reprieve. 6 days of life with all its cares and distractions followed by 1 day to especially ponder the love, faithfulness, and mighty deeds of God by singing this psalm. But in the exile, there was no rest. Presumably no Sabbath at all. And it seemed for them as if there was no God. When the Jewish people returned to their land, they were able to reinstitute the blessed Sabbath. The liturgy was resumed. No doubt there is a significant message here about the importance of gathering for the public worship of God. And by engaging in the life of that liturgy for the Jewish people, just as it is for us engaging in the liturgy of the church, we see the work of God and his triumph over the world being celebrated. It's there that hope for God's ultimate victory can be renewed. Mays says it like this. Psalm 92's title says it's a psalm for the Sabbath. Commenting on the title, there's a particular Mishnah that says this. It's a psalm and a song for the era to come, for the day that will be entirely Sabbath, for eternal life. Now, this was an ancient rabbi who wrote this. This rabbinical observation, Mays continues, recognizes that creation will not be completed in the Lord's victory over all enemies until the end of the age. Then there will be a final Sabbath rest for God and the righteous. The Sabbaths in time are a foretaste of this eschatological consummation. When the psalm is sung in this light, It brings the end time into the present and gives a marvelous interpretation of Sabbath worship and rest. And so we see that God is Israel's fortress once again. As Martin Luther famously wrote, "A mighty fortress is our God, a bulwark never failing, our helper he amid the flood of mortal ills prevailing." And so may God help us to see him as he is, our refuge and our fortress and our deliverer. May God bless you. I'll see you when we continue our studies in our next video. Until then, God bless.